Español 1, capítulo 6. El verbo ser y el verbo estar. Both of these verbs mean to be. In our very last chapter, we spent time talking about how people are feeling and their emotions or their physical conditions, and we used the verb estar. But if you think back to earlier things we've studied, things like how to say he is my brother or I am from Ohio, we used ser as well to mean to be. It's time for us to look at these two verbs in contrast and comparison. We begin with ser. Ser es un verbo irregular y las formas son soy, eres, es, somos, sois, son. This verb, of course, comes from Latin. The original Latin term was esse, and we get the English word essence, which means the essential, permanent ingredients that make up a person or a thing. Permanent being an important part of that definition. To help you decipher when in Spanish you should be using ser to talk about these permanent things or aspects of a person or a thing, we're going to use the acronym DOCTOR. And these letters stand for description, occupation, characteristic, time or date, origin, or relationship. We'll break this down, give you some examples of each one. This should be going into your note chart. Description. Soy alto. Soy baja. These characteristics of your physical self when you're describing how your hair looks or whether you're tall or short, thin or fat, those are pretty difficult to change quickly. And they are what people think of you all the time. That is the permanent aspect of your physical being. Occupation. Soy profesor. Él es profesor. Again, it took me years to become a teacher, so this isn't something I can easily change, and it is what people use to identify me. For yourself, you are currently a student, and you would say that, soy estudiante. Characteristics, whether they are personality or other physical traits, so we could say, ella es bonita. We could go on to say, ella es inteligente. Ella es cómica. Ella es generosa. These are things that we pretty much consider to be the way the person is all the time. If we were to use a dictionary definition, we would be using the verb ser to describe this girl. Back at the beginning of the year, when we were first learning how to tell time, son las tres, well, that's the verb ser, and also to tell the date. Hoy es el 21 de marzo. Again, we used the verb ser because you can't change the time or the date at that given moment, can you? It's pretty permanent. Also, at the beginning of the year, we learned that you can't change where you were born or where you came from. So that's what the O of doctor, the second O, stands for, is origin. You remember these phrases? Soy de Columbus. ¿De dónde eres? And then finally, the relationship. You see these two people, and you want to know how are they related to one another. We learned ella es tu madre, ella es mi madre también, somos hermanos. In this case, the verb ser basically is an equal sign, like a math problem. So, here they are again. Description, occupation, characteristic, time or date, origin, relationship. So, should you be wanting to construct a sentence where you're using any one of these kind of things, you will use the verb, you will choose to use ser to complete your sentence. Estar también es otro verbo irregular. Las formas son estoy, estás, está, estamos, estáis, están. Notice the accent marks. This verb also comes from Latin. The form stare translates as stand or stay, and in English it has come to mean state or station. These are pretty temporary. They change. You can move around. So estar is not a permanent condition. And the acronym we're going to use reflects that. Location, emotion, feeling, or anything else that's a temporary state or condition. Let's look at some examples. Estoy en Grove City. Nosotros estamos en la clase de español. But next week, we might be somewhere else. We might be in New York City. We might be at the beach. Emotion. Él está enfadado. But maybe in an hour, he'll get over it. He'll calm down, and we could change it to Él está tranquilo. Feeling. Ellos están nerviosos. Hay un examen importante hoy. But once they get that paper back tomorrow, I bet they'll be feeling terrific because they did so well. Or the temporary state or condition. Él está enfermo. No estoy enferma. Estoy lleno de energía. Recognize those sentences from the last chapter. So, let's take a look at these sentences together and do some analysis. The first one says, my cousin and I are at the store. What does this phrase, at the store, tell us about the situation? Are my cousin and I equal to the phrase at the store? Or does it tell us location? Yeah, this one's location. My cousin and I are at the store. The next one, the dog is very calm today. Well, calm has to do with how he's feeling, and today means that's not necessarily how he is all the time. So this one's definitely a feeling, and it's changeable. Number 3, I am very polite. Well, isn't that a definition of my characteristics, my personality? Yep. 4, I am happy today. Well, that's very much like number 2. I see the word today. That's a dead giveaway that it's not the way I'm always feeling. So that's an emotion. My best friend is from Costa Rica. We're looking at the word is. But is from tells us what about my best friend? Isn't it where they're from? Not where they are right now, but where they're from? Yep, origin. And then the last one, hey, the pizza's cold. Well, pizza's normally hot, isn't it, when we eat it? So that it's cold, that's a change, and that means it isn't permanent. That's that temporary state or condition that it's in. We could heat it back up and make it hot again, right? Please write a sentence in English that would be translated as ser, and then write one that would also use the verb estar. Here is your final practice. Don't advance until you have these answers. Here we go. Hasta mañana. We'll be working with this quite extensively during class.